Alright, now we're looking at the portrait of Ruby Dee, and what I've done, initiated a start here, is I took water over the whole paper, and I wanted this to have a slightly more abstract quality to it, more expressive. So I dropped some of that color I still had from the tutu, and I graded it down with some black, and I saturated the paper with the color. And so now I want to go into it with a little more information, but I just wanted something that was not quite so standardized in terms of portraiture. And so I'm taking a sponge to add a little texture to the surface so it wouldn't be so regular. All right, now I'm going to dry it so I can begin work. I just wanted you to see how I began this. Of course, you know when you're blow drying it, you want to make sure that you check your tape to make sure it hasn't pulled away, because it's real important that it stay nice and flat as possible. So now I want to start blocking in some of the stronger darks, and I'm going to kind of keep this, again, I'm not using color on this other than it being a grayscale, but I'm going to have a little bit of color here. I'm going to use a warm hue, warm dark, a warm dark, but I want to block in all the stronger values that help initiate information as to detail like eyebrows and eyes. So I've got a wet brush handy, and I'm going to use just a single brush to begin blocking in some of this. Right. Once that soaks in a little, I'm going to come hit it with a bigger brush. But for right now, make sure I capture the arch of the eyebrows. And I may even run a bit of the colored pencil through here. And I want to, again, use some other tools, not just keep this all painting. Right. Okay. And I'm also going to use this to suggest eyelashes. Okay. All right. And let that dry a bit. In the meantime, I'm going to feather some of this out. that dry. Come back to the other eye, same thing. Block that in. And the eyebrow as well. The nostril over on this side is very pronounced, so that's why I think I'm going to use my watercolor pencil for this to distinguish it more severely. Also going to run some in the darkest area in the other nostril as well. You need contrast, so if something is extremely dark, you really need to make sure that you engage that dark appropriately so that you can get some depth and three-dimensional form in your subject. Otherwise it'll stay relatively flat. Well, there's going to be more to do there, but for right now that's where we're at. I have my dark that I'm going to keep in my brush. Let me go ahead and run a little bit of the pencil through here as well. Come back and, all right, let's get that hair shape in. Now when I come down to the ear, I notice there's a little bit of hair behind the ear and below, which is important because that's going to help set off the earrings by providing the necessary contrast back there. Of course, I'll come back and add another layer of dark, but I just want to begin to divide up You remember a second ago that edge was really sharp, but now using this damp brush, you lessen the severity of that edge, and now it's made it much quieter. Trying to bring out the pencil again. So you see I used the pencil with whatever moisture was in the paper, and now I've come back to soften it up with a damp brush so that it loses that heavy texture and becomes a little smoother. See, once you start working inside, you can see the connection between values. It starts to be easier to see how one moves into another and allows for a more gradual completion. Things begin to become connected. I'm just dabbing a little gray in here because it's not really, the bottom lip isn't really white, so it's got a little texture in it. Okay. Come up here, and I can see where I've got a little bit of a problem, and I'm going to try to remedy it now. There's a little too much space between her nose and the mouth, but I'm gonna leave it. I should have picked up on that before going any further. That was a mistake on my part. Okay. See, now that I'm here, you can see how I have too much space. Problem, but it's okay. We're going to work through it. Okay. Get a little in the forehead. Yeah, and looking at this now, I made her lips too small and a little too low. See, most of the ear is in shadow, so I'm just brushing a little tone over it to just make it a more quiet appearance in the portrait and not draw a whole lot of attention to it, which would bring it out rather than keeping it tucked back. This gets a little dark in here. I intended to leave some of the white for your earrings evident, but I'm going to end up putting those in probably with the pastel. Quiet that light down right there. You see the chin or the neck area does need to be a little darker. So let me go ahead and add some more dark in here. Okay. We need a slight trace of her forehead on this side, and there's a little bit of her hair, some very fine hair shows on the other side, and that bit of gray is going to help bring out the other side of her forehead. Let's see if I'm doing this without getting my head in the way. I'm going to put a little fuzzy, delicate gray out here to suggest the other side of her head, forehead. Okay, here we go. And just to soften it, I'm going to go ahead and take a little sponge over the top. Probably increase the transition right here. There we go. Okay. Okay. One thing to keep in mind, if you do have a portrait that shows teeth, you'll see it illustrated here in the photograph. We know teeth are white, but if you look at the image, they're tucked in the mouth, so they're in shadow. The other thing to remember is the teeth are curved inside the mouth. That's how they wrap around. That's how we get all those teeth inside the mouth. So in order to make it look curved, you have to also notice that things get a little darker here, where it starts to go in the mouth. And the teeth that stand out the most, the front teeth, stay in a little bit of light. So I need to put a little gray right in here. And on the other side as well. Shade them in. And then there's just a faint trace of a line between the teeth. I'm just going to do it with my... There you go. And there you have, that's all you need for the mouth. You don't want to overwork it. I think the inside corner gets a little darker. Like that. There we go. Again, doing a little work with the pencil. Okay. And we got some shadow right in here. You have to keep looking. Alright, I'm going to stop working on this for the demo before I run out of battery. But you've got the gist of it now, I think. And always, again, also pay attention to whether or not you need to make something darker. Her hair in certain areas needs to be darker in value. I still have some of this that needs to be done, and of course the earrings. But that will come in the next video. Okay. Again, make sure the shape of your paper is very close to what the image that you're working from, so that you don't squish it in or make your image too small for that space. Okay? All right, catch you on the flip side.